Hello everybody and welcome back to another episode of RoboReplay, and in this one we're going to be taking a look at the Hopper Alliance Hopper Division, as well as seeing the one biggest thing that they did on the Einstein field, which was stealing an Algae in auto, which ended up leading their alliance to win on Einstein's from an Algae steal in auto, which is absolutely insane. But I do want to show off this alliance as well in situations that weren't just on Einstein, because they did have some really interesting ideas on how they were playing the game and how they created their alliance in general. So let's get into it. So immediately starting ourselves off in auto, what we're going to see is that we have 2767, who is basically the Algae defense bot. They were actually first picked by 1768, the captain of Alliance 1, and their role on this alliance is going to be that they're going to go Algae and just lock down defense. And on the other side, we have a very similar strategy, right? 1153 is going to do the same thing, but instead, 1153 was the second pick of Alliance 2. So, on one hand, you have Alliance 1 captain, first pick, doing defense, whereas Alliance 2 second pick doing defense and Algae on the other side. And so, what it'll basically come down to is it'll be these guys doing Coral versus these guys doing Coral, and whose defense and Algae skills can end up winning the game for the other alliance. And so starting ourselves off in auto, we'll see that if we count this little last Algae piece as part of auto, it'll be a 76-51 game going into it. And I think this is one of the biggest reasons that Alliance 2 ends up winning this match, but they don't end up winning the series, is because of the fact that their autos are a little bit inconsistent, and the auto points do end up really mattering in this situation. And so we'll see, right, 1153, immediately they're just like, let's pick up the Algae, and let's score some, and then we go to the other side. And immediately 1153 is just playing defense, and this is the biggest threat to every alliance that has played up against Alliance 1 is 1768's Coral. And the reason for that is not because 1768 has some incredible ground take or anything, but because their driver is so incredibly skilled with funnel that the time it takes to get to the Coral Station and back doesn't matter compared to like other robots who might have a ground intake, but it takes a little bit more time. So if we just watch 1768, what they'll do is they just run up and they get one inside of their robot without having to stop, which is really big because when you're able to conserve your momentum in such a way that you're just going in and then you get one that's in your gigantic funnel, by the way, well pointed out and draw it out later, but they have a massive funnel, so the Coral just falls into their funnel, centers itself, and they're able to get out even with people trying to knock them back and forth. And so we'll see it on the next try here, right? 1768's driver, right? You fake a shift to the right, and then 1153 has to respect it because of how incredibly fast you are. So they go set over to the right, and 1768, bam, immediately back in position to pick one up, and like you can see it, right? Let's go back there for a sec. They are fake to the right, and then we go to the station, and without stopping, we just hit ourselves against the wall, and we're back out. And it centers itself because of the fact that they have a ginormous funnel over here, right? That is a massive funnel that allows them to do that and get away with it. And so on the other side, we have 2767, who is just playing full defense, right? They took some Algae if they could on the ground, right? You can see on this side, they're going to take Algae they find on the ground and score for themselves because, you know, as we've talked about before, the point swings from Algae are really, really big in terms of maximum points, but they are just playing lockdown defense on the other side. And so what we'll see from 1768, and something I really like from them when they're doing something they're doing as an anti-defense idea, is if you watch the human player station over here, what they do is they have 1, 2, 3 corals loaded for themselves, right? And what we'll see is when they're coming forward, there's defense getting played on them. If there's a clean shot, right, and there's really no need to like kind of force something, there's no hard defense getting played on you, what they do is they just take the one and they get out. But as we'll see in the future, I'll let it show up. What ends up happening is they decide to say, okay, we're getting defense played on us. If there's one that's going to get hit out, what they'll do is they'll end up dropping 2 of the pieces at once. And because of the fact that they have a funnel, it doesn't end up mattering because even though there's 2 pieces getting dropped, one of them will always not land in. And so what it does is, right, you'll see it right here, right? Because of the fact that they have two human players loaded, 2 corals, one human player can drop it. If it looks like it's falling out, the other human puts it in. And even though they're getting bumped, so 1768's over here, and they have a coral dropped on them. That misses because they got bumped, right? So because of the fact they got bumped, they're moving over this way. So the 2077 human player drops one, and they pick one up, and then they're able to, from that, get all the way back around, and they're good. So it's just I love the way that they do their collection with funnel, and you'll see it be a lot better as 1153 completely locked in on this match, and was doing a pretty solid job just slowing these guys down compared to how much they were putting up in other matches. As we'll see in the finals too, as these guys do end up coming out of Hopper with the blue Einstein banner, the Alliance won. So on the other side, this was one part of the match, right? We focused on what happened on Red Alliance's side, but I would be remiss if I didn't try to focus on what happened with Strike Force on the other side, because they were doing some incredible work. And so let's just watch them on the bottom right corner here. As Bumblebee is going to try to go score, what they do is they play it perfectly, right? So if we go back, where are they positioning? They're positioning right over here. They're waiting for someone to come in, and they're just going to try to force them out in the inside, or they're going to wrap and force them out on the outside. And let's see it happen to BCR right here. So they push them, right? They're able to collect it, and what's their immediate reaction? We're going to wrap around, and then from there, we're just going to try to keep flat bumper and flat bumper, slow you guys down as much as possible. And then as soon as we see that they're gone, what do? We run over to the next robot and try to slow them down. And then we wait for them. And this is what I really love. This decision here, right? So they see 3339 is gone. And so what I see a lot of teams do, just in general, not at the world's level nearly as much, but in like the district level or like the regional level, is that when the teams are playing defense and they see that one robot's gone, the one they're defending is gone, and the other one is about to go collect one, and they're in a position like this where there's a robot here and there's a robot here, they constantly make the decision that, oh, let's just go over here and try to slow these guys down. Instead, Strike Force is very calm. They realize, okay, 2200 is gone. It is fine. Let's just defend 3339, chase them down. And by doing that, it lets them get a much cleaner defense on 3339 instead of trying to force something bad against 2200. And then you can just watch this series play out in the bottom right side of the corner, right? Strike Force is just wrapping perfectly with Bumblebee. And then right there, that was no foul because of the fact that they pulled out at the perfect position. Incredible series from them right there of just open field defense. And then they just constantly chase down 3339. One of the biggest reasons why their defense is so effective is obviously the fact that there's a coral station, right? Both these guys are not picking up off the ground. But also, they looked at the fact that 3339 doesn't have a funnel, and they have like a little thing that sticks out of the end of their robot that like grabs it like a Y claw, which makes it a whole lot easier a whole lot harder for them to collect it when they're under duress of defense. And then let's just watch Strike Force completely shut down BCR over here with another incredible series of plays, right? Push them to the side, even though they have the coral, just flat bumper on flat bumper, do not let them out, rotate with them, and they just shut them down. And even though they're doing such an incredible job, right, they do end up having to come back, and you look at the game piece difference, they're down 6 coral because of the fact that even though they're doing so good, it is still a first pick is playing defense on the other side of the field versus 2 first picks playing offense. And so what that means is that you're getting defense on your highest scorer, and it's basically just a defended highest scorer and your second pick versus 2 first picks who are getting really hard defended, and it ends up making it so that it's really hard for Alliance 1 to get the coral that they need to win the match. And then at the end here, with the climbs, it ends up being a pretty solid match, right? Alliance 2 ends up taking it, and a lot of it is due to the fact that the auto does hit really well. They are even in Algae after that, and the reason that you might say, okay, well, the Algae strategy wasn't good to go the other side, but that strategy, the only reason that either of the alliances were even in Algae was because both of them were constantly stealing from each other. So if they had a strategy of, okay, we're just going to leave the Algae, then one alliance could have ended up with a lopsided algae score. Maybe that ends up making a difference. In this case, with 20 points differential, I don't think that would have been the case. But still, it is a possibility in the future match. And so now we'll see how Alliance 1 adjusts their strategy for this loss that they had to Alliance 2 and how they absolutely go buck wild in this next match. So starting us off here, right, we have, again, the same auto. These guys are just going to be putting up points. But one of the biggest things is that this Blue Alliance will end up missing a lot more in terms of pieces that they could have hit. And so what we'll see is that instead of there being this gap of, like 70 points-ish, they actually end up down 5 at the end of auto because of the fact that, this last piece doesn't go in, there's a missed algae in here. So and Alliance 1 has also hit a lot more of their coral and algae. So it ends up with an auto lead to Alliance 1, which does contribute heavily to why they end up winning this match. But let's see what happens. So something I really like here is that Blue switches their strategy up a bit, right? What both these alliances are going to do, Strike Force was doing this earlier, but what 1153 is now going to do is say, okay, these algae lollipops on the ground, for both alliances really, we're just going to clear them out because they're so annoying to play defense into when there's algae on the ground that could get stolen. So we're going to have both of the robots, we're just going to take algae first. And you can see 1153 is taking algae, Strike Force is taking algae, and we're just trying to clear that out as it's just really annoying to play when there's game pieces on the ground that we can't collect and it's in our way and we don't like that. So we're just going to immediately just get rid of all the algae on the ground, pick it up off the lollipops, and then you can start doing your strategy. And we can see that because of the fact that these guys are a little bit faster with their algae intake, and their teammates are helping them out, the 2767 is able to finish their algae first, which means that 1153 just has less time to actually do defense. So you can see 2767 is on the other side here, and they still managed to pick up an algae off the ground and put it back up. And so 1153 does a pretty solid job here in general of defense, but what they end up doing a lot is just trying to get in the way, and I don't like the way that they play defense nearly as much as I do Strike Force, because what they attempt to do is trying to hit them to the side, right? That's their main way of playing defense, is just saying, okay, we can't be faster than 1768, let's just try to hit them on the side and see, maybe we can knock it out of their funnel, instead of trying to keep up with them, because keeping up with them, they've decided, isn't really possible. And so you see that's what they do every single time, right? That's where they're going back to the middle. They're saying, okay, let's just try to deny a piece by hitting them, but because of the fact that the funnel is so big, it just ends up really, really hard to do. And then another reason why this match ends up being a little bit dunzo for Alliance 2, even though it is really close, as you can see here, right, is this algae score, right? This 11 algae to 7 algae, it is a pretty significant gap in terms of game pieces. So you have to basically make up a 4 algae gap, and a 4 algae gap is 8 L1s if you fill up all the branches, which you can see that both alliances are doing here. So they need 8 more L1s to make up that algae point differential. And then at the end here, 3339 does end up breaking down, which is just absolutely horrible for their alliance. And you can see that they're trying to play anti-defense on Strike Force, just allow 2200 to try to get as much as possible. But because of the fact that they broke down, you now only have 1 scorer compared to the 2 scorers on the red side, as well as the fact that the defense wasn't nearly as effective as it was in the first match. And then what that ends up leading to is a match where you basically lose, right? You have coral loss, but the coral loss could have been mitigated if 3339 was still up. But even if you had let's say that you had the climb, right? Let's say you had the climb, it's 232 to 249, and let's say you get the 7 points to 239, it's still a 10-point difference, right? And the 10-point difference, it comes from the algae, and that algae is just really, really, really hard it's hard to make up that difference, right? Is what we learned from all of our matches that we saw at Worlds, is that when teams are able to win that algae battle, especially so dominantly with 11 pieces to 7, it's just very hard to make it up when you have such even alliances. And so what would end up happening in this is that the finals 3, Alliance 2 would end up changing their strategy because 3339 broke. And so Alliance 1 would end up making it their way to Einstein's, where we would see the Algae Steel match. And let's get into that one because I absolutely loved watching that match. So, going into this match, what these guys have done, this is a lower bracket, so you've had time to see everybody play a match. And what I want to point out here is that I won't go over the actual Archimedes finals to try to show this to you, but just trust me, you guys can look back at this if you really care about it. But what ends up happening is these guys have been running one auto for basically the entirety of finals and going into Einstein's, and they change it up here. And so when you see that a team is changing an auto up from when you're setting up, right? You're looking at it and you're like, oh, that's a different auto than what they were running the entire time. What are they doing? And if you try to look at this saying, what are they doing? Then it becomes really, really clear that all three of these robots are trying to do Coral. And what they've done is they've set 8044 in a position to go all the way to the back and try to do the lollipops. They said 2041 do this side, and then we're going to have 3940 do this side as well. Whereas in the other scenarios, they always had 8044 in the middle doing two Algae, and then they had these guys swapped here, and 2481 tried to do about the lollipop autos. So when you think about that, and you're like, okay, what are they doing? They're doing all Coral, and they're all going to be on the back side, right? You're going to have 8044 here, 2041 here, and 3940 here. What does that mean? That means 2767 has a chance to run their Algae Steel auto. And this auto was not the only one that was created for stealing Algae. I know 3467 and 1153 at least had it. So there are other teams who have tried to do Algae Steel autos, but it was never really the right time. And so you'll see that 2767 decides that they're going to give up that 2.5 Algae in favor of, we're just going to take an Algae and go up and bam. And remember, like, Algae denial is super important here. And it becomes really important in this match as well. That one stolen Algae is going to matter a ton. And so, same strategy from this side, even going into Einstein's, we just 2767 is going to do Algae and play defense. And it's going to be, they're trying their best to do it. And it works out pretty well. Right. Something else to note here, 2877 did end up breaking. This is not a swap for strategic purposes. 2877 ends up breaking down in an earlier match, and so they are playing this with their fourth robot instead of their normal robot, which could contribute to why this match ends up being really, really close, even though 8044 does break. But if we take a look here, I do want to point out this really heads-up play from 2767. They see that 2481 is doing an Algae, but they're way too far over, so they say, okay, if we try to get ourselves inside of this zone, our bumper's going to be in there. We get a free foul, a free couple of points. Doesn't end up happening because they didn't rotate themselves enough. But it's a great idea, great heads-up play by 2767 to do that. And you see, like, 8044 is one of the best Coral scorers on this Archimedes Alliance. They are first pick. And so what'll end up happening to these guys is something will go wrong, and they do end up breaking down, sadly, which does contribute to why these guys do end up losing. But on the other side, when you let 1768 just completely go free, you can see how fast they're going, right? Like, this is insane pace for a team that is not picking up off the ground. And you can see they're not stopping at all. And at all when they're driving, and they're just running up, getting it slotted in, and they go out. And it's just very, very well played by them overall. And just when you go Coral for Coral, these guys come close, right? Again, we see why the Algae matters. They're up 4 Algae, but down game pieces. And then here is where 8044 does end up breaking, sadly. This was a really, really close match up until then. I'm sure it probably would have been decided by climbs. But then they say, okay, we're broken. Go play defense against Toshoba. Try to keep ourselves alive. But then, we saw what happens when you try to play defense against Toshoba. There's really nothing you could do other than just sit in one location and just try to slow them down by hitting them. And they decide, okay, not really worth the time. With 15 seconds left, let's go try to climb. And their arm doesn't let them climb at the end there. And so we see that at the end here, it does end up coming down to the Algae Steel. The 8-point difference if these guys didn't end up stealing that Algae in auto, this would have been a 40 to a 32. And then at that point, you end up with a tied match, and these guys could have pulled away with it. We'll never know, obviously, but the Algae steal did absolutely win these guys a match on Einstein. Along with the fact that 8044 does break, sadly. I would have loved to see this Archimedes Alliance go a little bit further, because I think that they absolutely have the potential to do something like make a pretty solid upset run. But alas, wasn't able to do it, and Hopper ends up coming out of this one with the win. So, congratulations to this Hopper Alliance. You know, got a Blue Vader, won a match on Einstein. What more could you ask for? Congrats to them. And this is going to be the last video that I make on this Worlds. I obviously, you can tell from when this video was released, it has been a while. I am trying to slow down the making of these videos because of the fact that it is now the off season. I do plan on doing probably like IRI content, Chesney content, Battle Cry maybe if there's a good match here or there. But other than that, I really just want to try to hopefully get out a review of Reefscape video, trying to put everything into perspective from the start of the season to the end of the season, how the strategy evolved, how the meta evolved, what can you take from that and learn, as well as potentially I might make a video of another shooter game year, as people are predicting next year to be a shooter game, which you're trying to see how does the meta evolve in different shooter games, and what can we learn from that shooter game and bring it forward into the next one. Thank you for watching, and have a lovely day.